The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Best Practices for Office 365 Backup, the do's and don'ts. My name is Veronica, and I'm Inside Hosting Manager working for NSE region. And I'm joined today with our special guest. We have Artyom, who is a cloud architect here at Veeam. Artyom, do you want to say hello to all attendees?
Yeah, hi guys, hi from my side, and once again, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. So, few house rules. You are muted on the entry, so if you have any questions, please go ahead and use your Q&A panel, and we will be getting these questions during or after the presentation. But if by any chance we not have enough time, we will get back to you individually to answer your questions. So don't worry, nothing, we will not miss anything. The session is recorded and you will get the recording as well as the presentation a few days after the webinar. So we'll get back to you. This is another session from a series of dedicated webinars to our VCSP community across EMEA. And just before the session, we actually found out that when it comes to the number of registrants, this session will be scored top 2 after V11 session. So we believe that's a big thing, because that just proves that there is interest in what we're going to talk about today. Last time session was dedicated to public cloud, and today we are focusing on data that already resides in the cloud by design, because software as a service is used by a large majority of organizations today. And we specifically will be looking at the popular Office 365 service. And we are very excited. I don't know how you're excited, Artyom, but I am, to talk more about Veeam backup for Office 365. And we have a great agenda. And I think we have a great agenda thanks to Artyom, who is going to deep dive into what to do and what not to do when it comes to Veeam backup for Office 365. And of course, our main focus goes to version 5 because there are a lot of improvements, and we will show you that we continuously develop and improve the product. And the latest innovation, as many of you might already know, is a big one, because it will be about Microsoft Teams. And why Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams adoption is something that we will cover because of its growth. We will also cover some reasons, just to remind ourselves why we choose to back up this data. We will dive into Teams in version 5, in version 5, how Teams works, and Artyom will take us through a live demo. And we will hopefully ramp up with Q&As. So if you have a question, just remind yourself that this is time for you, and use it well. And just to kick things off and give you a little bit more time to join before we go into the most important part of the presentation, let's talk about Teams, because it's officially Microsoft's fastest growing business application ever. And this is driven, of course, by ourselves, by you, by organizations that have been working remotely for some time. And the past 6 months have actually driven the growth by 50%. So when it comes to more things to manage and more responsibilities, when it comes to backup, because of the growth. And today we have something like 115 million active users of Microsoft Teams, although Microsoft Teams data has its own backup retention and doesn't fully protect against accidental deletion of security threats. We should remember that there are some reasons why we should protect those data. And let's recap what reasons we have and why we should remember to back up Microsoft data. And we should also make our customers aware of it. So accidental deletion, it's the most common. We all make mistakes, and this comes on the top of the list, because even information is gone, you need to have a backup to be able to put it back into system, right? Retention policies are designed basically to help organizations, to help your clients comply with regulations, law, internal policies, and that require them to retain or delete content. And customers are actually responsible for compliance of data they store in Office 365. So as a customer, you have to set up those rules correctly in order not to lose any data. And backup is a great idea because it will work like your insurance policy, especially when it comes to something new like Teams that customers might not be yet familiar with. There are also security vulnerabilities. It can be either internal threats from own employees as well as external coming from various viruses attacks. And maybe we or customers are actually underestimating this, but the risks are there and potential threats. So basically, no matter what happens, you should have a safe copy of your data. You also need a backup solution to help with legal compliance requirements. So you can be able to receive a file or have a copy of it for legal reasons. And lastly, we're managing hybrid deployments. This is always a challenge to provide access and control to all hybrid deployments and migration. And it's a very common challenge within the market as well. And Veeam Backup for Office 365 actually allows you to handle it. And the last reason that has been added and that appeared is the Teams data structure. And the very nature of Teams and the fact that it's not structured and data is scattered through Office 365, which as a result presents more complexity and risk. And our last stop will be, before we jump into Artyom's presentation, would be to take a look on some statistics, because not only Office 365 continues to grow, and it is said that there are around 258 million users already, and over 80% of our respondents admitted that they already use Office 365 or with OneDrive and SharePoint, or at least just Office 365. And with 30% in total considering or eligible to further use more Office 365 features. So if we take a look on the left pie charts, you will see that there are many organizations that are still not backing up the Office, and they are exposed to different threats by relying on, let's say, building capabilities, or simply not backing up their data at all. And that just proves that we have almost 70% business that is left unprotected. And then the next slide, you said that you know, the way organization primary protect strategy looks for Office 365 just opens opportunity for our backup as a service provider to find I would call it a lucrative opportunity to illuminate that requirements to their customers, to stress that the Office 365 environment and Teams data are our data, their data, and we should control it, and we have responsibility to protect protected. So this is just a short introduction, and now I pass the floor to Artyom, who will show us why Veeam is #1 in Office 365 backup solution, and it can make it easier than ever for users to quickly find and restore data, including Teams data.
Okay, great. Thanks, Veronica. Thanks for great
You're
introduction.
welcome.
There are a lot of actually, guys, if you think, a lot of useful stuff or useful numbers that you can use even in the conversation with your customers further on. But yeah, that's our reality. Yeah, and this last year shows us the importance of their, let's say, online communications in this world. Yeah, that's interesting thing. And again, guys, first of all, I would like to hi everyone, because I've seen few more people, I mean 100 at least, joined us in last 10 minutes. So again, everyone, hello, and thanks for joining us for this hour. And I know that online sessions are frequently provoking, you know, to be started and run in the background, because you get some extra time to finish outstanding activities in the meanwhile. However, I hope you'll make an exclusion today, and you'll put all your concentration and attention to our webinar, because we have lots of things to discuss. And honestly saying, just like 49 minutes left. So let's just kick off, okay, and deep dive into the subject. And I simply want to start with a real straightforward story on how we came to the idea of this webinar. Because I believe you know, there are multiple different webinars in Veeam, and I know that even Tech Tuesdays right now is coming with different subjects. But still, the story will not take a lot of time, but will give you, I guess, and I believe, in a great understanding on why we are here and what is the outcome that we're expecting from this session. Straightforward, yeah. So it's not a big surprise that we'll talk about Veeam backup for Microsoft Office 365, yeah. And the product is more than 4 years on the market, and during these 4 years, it continues developing and improving. And it's one of the most successful products of our portfolio. It's one of the most successfully growing products in our portfolio as well. And this webinar, as Veronica mentioned, it's like #2 after V11, which makes sense. Yeah, you never can beat V11 webinar, but it's still pretty huge and pretty great achievement for us as well. And with each and every release of this software, of the product, we are looking to make it better in different ways, in completely different perspectives. As you can see here on your screen, yeah, it's all the time not just about new features that we are trying to drop in each and every release, but it's about making everything faster as well. And to make it faster, not just, you know, to be able to finish the backup job in a quicker way. It doesn't matter. In case you can finish it in 8 hours, who cares? Yeah, you're pretty safe. But it's just to be able to process more data at the same time. Because all we know, again, the data is growing. I believe we're hearing for the last 3-4 years. And last year showed us how fast it is growing. So, and let's take version 5 as an example. Yeah. So, as been mentioned before, it's growing, data is growing, and as well services are growing as well. Yeah. And the last version of Office 365, we've added purpose-built backup and recovery for Microsoft Teams. It was one of the flagship features, making it easier than ever for users to quickly find, to restore different Teams data, including entire Teams, channels, settings, everything that you need, including specific e-discovery. It's like really amazing way how you can search and find data inside. And it's not as it was before, because even in version 4, we've been saying that, yeah, we can back up Teams data, but now it's a solution built specifically for Teams with a number of options there, yeah, with a granular search, with a search across Teams components, with effortless find any Teams item with a broad set of search criteria, because you can just like combine criteria and find specifically what you need without going to SharePoint, looking for specific object in the SharePoint that's related to this team, and so on, yeah, without this craziness. You need to restore it, you can get it. And that was the flagship, actually, the flagship style, the flagship feature in the product. However, in the same release, and for most of you, maybe it came under the radar, but our R&D team put an amazing, just like great force into improving engine of the solution by itself. And with all the improvements, it became 5 times faster, 5 times more scalable than before. It became around twice faster than moving data between different types of repositories when moving data from JET database to object storage, because we've heard your feedback and we've been sure that, like, yeah, we need to tune it a bit. And if you've been using it before, it was not slow at all, yeah. But as well, we're trying to be proactive and find these gaps and eliminate them even before you face them. So a lot of things in Veeam about like how to make it faster in the right way. And if we'll accumulate all the product objectives that you've seen before on the single page, there will be lots of things. And I mean, not lots, but lots of things. This is just like the top of the iceberg. There are even more. But you have to pay something for something. That's the rule of the game. That's the rule of our life. That's the rule of the IT infrastructure. That's the rule of when we develop in the software. And spending these 4 years on the market, we made the product extremely scalable and flexible. However, it added a bit of complexity as well. Yeah? And you can run it on any platform, keep data whenever you want, and keep it for how long you want. And with all this functionality comes the responsibility. The responsibility for an appropriate architecture of the solution. And that brings us to the idea that now, this year, is a perfect moment to make a focus, to make a deep dive in what, how, why, and when to do. To reveal maybe some best practices we've seen on the market, to show them to you, to share it with you. But we are aware that any best practice is not the only correct available answer. And keep it in mind as well during the session, because I'll drop a lot of information to you. I'll drop a lot of solutions and tips and tricks to what you can do and how you can do. But it will fit the majority of cases. But the downside of any best practice, it can be totally wrong under certain circumstances. Yeah. To make it right, you have to be sure and you have to understand the implication of the advised best practices. So we'll try to cover this as well. But in case you're making any kind of design, in case you're proposing any kind of solution and you're not sure, at least like, for 10% that like, is it really should be done in this way? Come back to us. We're here to help you. And we're here to share our knowledge and our experience in the field as well. So let's go further. Yeah. To get into advanced things, before getting into any advanced things, it's sometimes very important to recap some basic stuff. So for guys who maybe just like for 10 years with Veeam and have seen Office 365 from the beginning, maybe it will be a bit recapping of what you well know, but still, I hope that you'll catch some good ideas. So yeah, we'll make a really quick recap of their core infrastructure, of the core idea of the software, what is it and which components we'll talk about. Yeah, it will not take a lot of time. So the core idea of the software literally is to give you availability to get data from Office 365, take it out of there and store it separately. And as Veronica highlighted before, yeah, there are lots of reasons why you have to do it. We'll not deep dive into that again, but there are a huge amount of reasons. And here you can see some like an overview of components engaged into the process. So what we have on the screen. So surely better to start with some basic stuff, yeah, with the source data, because what we have to back up. So, and with Office 365, with Veeam backup of Office 365, yeah, it's Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, all together. If they're online, if they're offline, you still can backup Exchange and SharePoint, still using on-premises hybrid deployment. It's up to you. Yeah. For the product itself, it's not a big difference. It's more about your choice, because there are different infrastructures, different combinations. You, your customers may use different solutions for the production part. For us, for Veeam, it doesn't really matter. We can cover both. So for Veeam backup for Microsoft Office 365 by itself, yeah, it's a software component that you can deploy on-prem or directly in the cloud. As well, it's up to you. Once installation package is downloaded, you can install it on Windows-based machine, which can be literally anything. Yeah, it can be virtual, it can be physical, it can be virtual in the cloud. When and why we'll discuss in the details a bit later. Yeah, we'll cover it, but for us, it's important to keep in mind it's a software component that we can put anywhere. And by the way, if you're using backup replication, Veeam backup replication for virtual infrastructure, I mean, you can mention that the required components names for backup processing are really the same to VBR, yeah? Though they're completely separate from VBR. Let's not confuse ourselves with that, because in both solutions we get proxy repositories, but their idea of the component is completely different. So we're not share the same component, the same machines, nothing like that. Never do it, yeah? So proxy for Office 365, it's completely different from proxy from backup and replication. But as well, we'll touch it a bit later. And the next one, as I mentioned, yeah, it's actually the proxy by itself. The proxy is a service which communicates with Office 365 with our production data, getting this data, obtaining this data from it, data related to Exchange Online, again, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and so on. Proxy, they're actually the muscle of the product. They're taking the data, they're processing the data, and it's capable of parallel processing. So it's pretty smart technology in the backend. And there are a lot of other smart things on the background that's happening through the proxy. But the main idea, simple, taking data from point A, moving data to point B. Yeah. And point B is our repository. A service which receives the data from proxy and put it where we store our backups as well. How to decide where to store, how to optimize it, we'll talk later. Right now, the main idea is just to recap which components we have in the product. And apart from that, together with VBR, when you deploy the software, you're deploying a separate REST API service and PowerShell components for automation. The design concept is pretty simple, efficient, and it gives you an unlimited number of services to provide for end user. And all the services will cover today as well. So again, yeah, let's have a look on the sketch once again. So the conceptual design is relatively simple. When you're building the solution for simple deployment with 25, 30 users, you literally can take and install, fit all of it in a single VM and let it go. And it will work. And it's pretty okay design as well. But 25, 50 users, that's not the sizes we're talking about, right? It can be okay for the single customer, but that will not work when we're talking about multiple of customers. Yeah. And the things are a bit, not really a bit, they're a lot different when we're talking about providing services based on their same architecture, on this architecture. There are different approaches that you can use in this scenario when we're talking about multi-tenant environment. Well, we're talking about multiple servers. In this scenario, yeah, we can help you with common issues related to the service provider model, but we should think about it in a bit different perspective and use different approaches. And actually, these approaches can unlock new opportunities for service providers, yeah? Because it can simplify even the license management, the deployment, and all this stuff. And one of the focus of today's session is the way how you provide backup for 365 as a service to the customer, to the end user. There are different ways actually that as well. There is no right or wrong way. Each of it can be fitted to a specific scenario. And from high and low level architecture, it's completely different from what a regular user who is taking control of their own infrastructure. I mean, what they're doing. And we'll cover this in details, yeah. But let's start with some basic concepts and recommendations. Before diving into that, the one and the only question you have to ask yourself when you're making the design, when you're architecturing the solution, is what you're really planning and trying to achieve, yeah. Meaning, for example, who will configure the solution, who will run the solution, who will trigger the restore when it needed, because based on that, you may choose different scenarios, yeah? Based on who will do, how will do, and how you expect it to be done. And not only right now, but think about as well in future, yeah, in 3-4 years, in the foreseeable future. It's like how I'm planning to provide the services later on. Am I just like touching the water and will decide it later, or I'll already have some kind of vision about, yeah, I want to provide fully managed solution where customer will not have any control on the infrastructure. And if you're providing managed services, your deployment most likely will look like that. The one that you can see on the screen, yeah? It's usually the simplest option, how to place components and how to design it. You have VBR, Veeam Backup Office on your side or in the public cloud, and set of proxies number of proxies just should be sufficient to process data in a suitable time frame. As well, that depends on the sizing. Sizing we'll cover later. You're deploying a repository. Maybe it's a local repository where you'll keep the data, or in most of cases, when you're providing this kind of service, you'll add some kind of S3 storage or local S3 storage and a small cache on premises. Okay? And it's simple. However, in the case restore procedure and everything, not only restore procedure, all the configuration, it's fully managed by service provider. That means for us that tenant is not in control. There are no built-in service capabilities in this scenario. Yeah? And even more, tenants must provide Microsoft organization credentials or somehow to do it in a secure way to the service provider to configure jobs. So there should be a real trust relationship between service provider and the customer. If you have this relationship, and if you're providing the service to the customer, or maybe even you're providing management of the Office 365 for the customer, so there is no problem at all. Yeah, you can go this way. But as a payback, service provider have to rule them all, everything. Yeah, but there are a lot of benefits for service provider as well. It's simple. You're getting extremely simple license management. You have to manage one Microsoft server, one server of Office 365, maybe few in case you're just scaling out, but not dozen. You're sharing the resources, so you don't waste idle resources. That's a great benefit as well. And you can easily scale it in or even scale it out when it's needed because it's all in your control. And it's simple, but really efficient. Even more, as I said, you even can scale it out, making it per tenant installation for each customer as well. That depends on the agreement. You can provide access directly to VBO console to backup admin. So imagine the situation that you're starting with a single deployment, you're backing up 10 organizations using this single server, and one moment, another huge customer coming to you with their own requirements on the security. They don't want to use shared infrastructure. They want to have backups to keep backups in your data center, but they don't want to share it. So no props here. You can deploy additional VBO server with same amount of components, proxies, and run it for this individual customer. And if you negotiate it, you even can provide access to the customer to the maybe Veeam Backup Office console where they can run their store as well. This is not a technical limitation. That's more about how you build and how you flow your business in this specific scenario. And another one that's even more frequently used by service provider in multi-tenant environment is making a combination of two services. Yeah, is using Cloud Connect infrastructure to burst backup for Office 365 services. And I'll stop for a bit longer here because there's a lot of misunderstanding related to the approach. That's related only to Veeam Cloud Connect server and doesn't impact repository infrastructure. So when you're deploying it in this way, and when you want to leverage Cloud Connect infrastructure and cloud gateways to give customers access through the cloud gateways to the Veeam Backup for Office 365 repository, you're just using Cloud Connect server. You just have to install Veeam Backup Office 365 together with Veeam Cloud Connect on the same machine, in the same operating system. Yeah? Veeam Cloud Connect may have different repository located on different nodes specifically for Cloud Connect customers. VBO will have their own repositories and they can be completely isolated from each other. Yeah, just keep it in mind. But in this case, in case service provider deploying VBO on top of Cloud Connect installation, customers getting possibility again to leverage Cloud Gateway connection to restore themselves. However, the huge downside of their solution is that at the same time, customer require VBR installation, dedicated VBR installation on their side. So I'm dedicated, I mean, yeah, they can still use this installation to run backup of their virtual infrastructure, but they will be able to connect to the repository in the office only in case this installation is already configured and connected to the service provider, just as a cloud user. Yeah. In this case here, you'll be able to use Explorer, and the Explorer will connect to the service provider repository of 365 repository through the cloud gateway. Just to underline, yeah, in this case, tenant can partially be in control. They can control the restores, and that's good. No real VPN needed to the tenant to get access to the repository. So just like done using the Veeam API, Veeam technology. It's pretty straightforward, but cons is straightforward. Yeah, this solution, this approach, this design requires backend replication server on tenant side. However, keep in mind, it's even not recommended in the long term, but it's okay for the ramp up. Yeah. So that's the idea. In long-term perspective, what is really recommended is to leverage REST API, and based on that, build self-service portal. And I can predict that right now I'll have a lot of questions in the questionnaire box, just like when Veeam will have portal, when you provide portal like native portal, and it's still the same answer. Yeah, guys, their concept, the vision of our product management team and R&D team is right now that we are providing the REST API. The REST API that can help you to build portal on your own, because we can see on the market there are different requirements. Yeah, we can agree or disagree with that, but it is what it is. There is still a possibility that at one moment we'll provide some kind of really basic functionality, basic portal, but I even haven't heard about it, honestly saying. Yeah, that's just like speculation right now on my side. However, that's the idea. Yeah, you can use the power of the REST API. And just for those who are not aware about the REST API, I'll drop a few things so you'll understand what we're talking about here. Yeah. So REST API, as well, it's known like REST full API, kind of the same thing. It's something like application programming interface API, web API that conforms and constrains the REST architectural style and allows interaction with RESTful web services. In simple words, if you want to interact with a computer or system and you want to retrieve some information or perform some kind of action, function, activity, an API helps you to communicate with that system in a, let's say, simple way, how you can simply code it and script it. Yeah. So that said, whatever can be done through Veeam UI, it can be done through API. And honestly saying, even more. Yeah. For example, if you can create a workflow through which your customer can add MFA-enabled organization in the infrastructure without even providing you the password. Yeah? So you can provide the web interface where the customer will add all the credentials, everything that they need, send them in a secure way, and so. And there are actually on the slide, if you'll see on the bottom of the slide, there are a few small links. You'll have this deck after the session, after the recording. Yeah. So I believe you'll be able to get there. There's some information, deep dive information about REST API, some examples about how you can use it, what are the workflows, and how simple it is to implement it in the infrastructure. Yeah, take a look in case you're thinking about the portal. It will dramatically help you because there's some basic thing explained here in a pretty nice way with real workflows inside. And at the same time, in case you're interested in making your own portal and you need something to start this, yeah, there is a publicly available community-driven self-service portal. Again, it's public. It's community-driven, meaning it's not officially supported, but it's done by one of our system engineers, by Niels, thanks to him. And in the bottom link, you'll have the link for the project on the GitHub. Right? It's recently been updated to version 5, meaning it's added support of Teams. So in case you're interested to start from, or you want to investigate, will it be beneficial for you? Will it be useful for you to invest some time and money into developing your own portal? You can start from this one, provide it as an example to your customers and get their feedback. Yeah? So there are multiple ways how you can play with it, but that's the long-term vision. And keep it in mind, yeah, the long-term vision that if you want to be successful in the market, you will have to invest a bit of time into working and thinking about the working with their portal. Yeah. In case you're providing fully managed service, that's the big deal for you. You can do it yourself. But in case you would like to give the front end to the customer, that's the right way. That's the right decision. Right. All right. So I believe we're done for the moment with this high-level infrastructure. So let's deep dive, because I hope the conceptual design is a bit more or less transparent and clear right now. I hope you've learned something new for yourself as well, and maybe you get some ideas about how you can modify the infrastructure. But as you've seen, honestly, there's no rocket science. Yeah. However, few important decisions have to be done when you're designing it or when you're planning what kind of service you will provide to your customers. So now let's dive deeper and deeper, you know, just like the advanced diving. So And we'll start with as well basic component and discussion about how we should play and how we should work with these components. Yeah, and we'll start basically with VBR, and I mean VBO server. And as you know, Veeam Backup Office 365 server, and actually all components that you're running there right now, yeah, we can run them on virtual servers. And as the software can run within virtual servers, you can deploy Backup Office 365 on your virtualization platform, even within a private cloud, or at the platform at the hyperscaler cloud provider like Azure or Amazon AWS. Yeah, and to make it even easier for deployment within Azure, you even have some kind of templates that are available at the marketplace, right? And making this choice for the final location for running Backup Office 365, it's not even really a technical decision. Yeah, it's a business decision instead of real technical choice. There are multiple important reasons for creating a backup of your Office 365 data, and there are multiple Veeam Backup Office 365 customers' decisions, and all of them, they decide to store them at home within the local infrastructure or to ensure they will have a copy of their own data somewhere else. There are other customers running within Azure based on the Veeam Backup Office 365 template available in the marketplace, and they're happy with that as well. I'd say when you're thinking about that, you should think about constant pros, about, let's say, about risks that you can admit and complexity that will follow as well. Because if you have your own infrastructure, you'll keep it there. Yeah, you'll take the data, you'll keep it there, but you should think about how maybe to move this data out. If you'll keep it in Azure, you should keep in mind about that it's still all the data in the same bucket. I'd say, I'm not recommending anything, but I'd say maybe keeping this data in some other cloud, or it can be something like a good compromise, something in the middle. But as well, keeping the data in another cloud can bring you to the situation when there are conflicts between clouds and they're trying to throttle the traffic in between. Yeah, so it can be complicated as well. Just keep in mind when you design it in the right way as well, you can Google some information about the sizing that we recommend for Azure. For example, right now it's F-type or D-type for best performance. Don't undersize the machine, because, for example, B series in Azure is like pretty tasty in case of the price, but it's not recommended due to CPU limitations. But as well, sizing in numbers about the sizing we'll cover just in a few minutes later. Nevertheless, yeah, guys, the core idea and mission of VBO server is just to create and control execution of backup jobs. Running a bit forward, actually, we can run backup job and we'll continue running backup job even if the core server is down, but that's not the idea. Yeah, so their initial idea and mission is to create and control execution of them. And configuring a single backup job, you know, the single job that will back up everything, the entire data, it's very, very, very appealing because it's simple. Yeah, you just like make a few clicks at everything, the entire organization or even set of organization, and just like, that's good. But the maintenance of a single backup job is a huge, huge challenge because there are a lot of risks associated with that. Yeah? Single job, it's first of all, single point of failure. And it's extremely hard to manage and troubleshoot. If you have any issues and you have, you know, like huge organization, you created one single job, you got issues, you open the support case, having the single one job, it's like tremendously will increase amount of time that our support team will spend fixing the solution. Yeah? So when creating the job, keep in mind different types of jobs, different types of data don't grow equally. Amount of changes you'll have in Exchange, not equal amount of changes you have in OneDrive. So it's a great idea to create separate jobs based on the application type. Yeah, so it can be separated for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, or even you can drop it more granularly. This will allow to direct the jobs to different repositories with separate retention, even with separate proxy servers, and do it in a smart way. Yeah. Maximum size of the job, it's not hard coded. Yeah, there is no this kind of thing. But from field experience, I can tell you that it's not recommended to exceed 4,000 users per job, yeah, per one service. Keep it in mind. And as well, we are talking about thousands of users. When we're talking about thousands of users, yeah, it's advised to increase the retry fail in job configuration. You'll see it in configuration. We'll not jump to the interface right now, but there's specific configuration, job retry, put it to 20 minutes or more, just to avoid any kind of storm, yeah, failed storm during processing, because thousands of users, that means we need some retries and they can just overlap to each other. So just increase it, it's not a big deal. And obvious recommendation is to run the backup job outside working hours. Yeah, if you're running Veeam backup replication, you know it's one of the main rules, just better to run it out of working hours just to reduce impact on the infrastructure. And as well, to reduce impact on Microsoft Office 365 throttling when other clients are operating. Yeah, throttling for Office 365, it's a huge subject. We'll touch it a bit later, but we want to avoid this throttling to happen as much as possible. And as been said, you can split job per application, or you can go even beyond that. For Exchange, for example, it's recommended to create number of multiple jobs based on group if the environment is more than 500 mailboxes. Just think about 500 mailboxes is not too much, yeah. So I believe most of you haven't like that, but it's already the cap. The backup job based on group objects are easy to manage for backup and restore operations and provide a really good performance. For example, jobs can be based on departments, for example, yeah, in their organizations. Yeah? And Veeam Backup for Office 365 also can provide the option to exclude specific mailboxes from the backup job in event user left the organization. So you can easily exclude the mailbox from backup job processing, as actually shown on the picture. Yeah. That, however, keep in mind that when you exclude the user and the user resigning the company, the user, however, will still consume license for a period of time in our software because you still got backups, and we're keeping it for 30 days, so we still will have to assign one license to that. But you can free it manually using the PowerShell command as well. It's in the bottom of the slide. There you can check it later. It's pretty simple command that you can run and free the license. It will remove the data as well of the user, but in case you need it, it's just like a good trade-off. Yeah. That's the benefit of using something besides UI. Yeah, the PowerShell is pretty powerful as well. And the same thing is possible for SharePoint farm. Yeah, you can just like choose the option, protect the SharePoint farm, but as best practice, single job at around 50 sites, 50 SharePoint sites to a single job. Yeah, so just like to have more granularity. Another great thing about this scheduling, sizing, and actually related to their throttling mechanism is backup accounts and backup applications. That's been added to the software like in version 4. So the core idea is when you're handling a lot of SharePoint online and OneDrive for business, you might encounter throttling mechanism. I believe you already did it a few times. Yeah. To counter this mechanism, which works actually on the per user basis, you can configure multiple backup accounts in VBO, which are used to back up the data. Yeah, that will affect specifically SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams a bit as well. If you encounter throttling, just start with 8 accounts per proxy for organization and increase by increments of 8 until throttling is minimized or disappear completely. Don't do more. Yeah, it's not required. 8 is a good number to start with. And to help create and add accounts, you can have a look on the blog of the Nils, who created the PowerShell script to automate adding of the backup resources as well. Link is on the slide on the bottom. You're free to check it later on. It's a great script, pretty simple, straightforward. Yeah. As well, when you're using only modern authentication, you'll not use backup accounts. You obviously use backup applications instead. Same principle, same idea. Just start with increments of 10. Yeah, just from our field experience, that's the best number. Yeah, but keep in mind, so the accounting and sizing of the accounting, increasing number of accounts, it's a great counter to their throttling mechanism when we're backing up SharePoint. You don't have to do it for Exchange. In Exchange, we're using a different approach, but here it's pretty important. Yeah, guys, 15 minutes left, and we have 20 slides more, so let's try to fit them. Yeah, so. Next guy, proxy. So with the service configuration, I hope it's clear right now. Yeah, key takeaway, split jobs, increase number of service accounts. But with proxy, it's a bit more challengeable. Yeah, a component, it's used to leverage network traffic when backing up and restoring data. And by default, or in the default configuration, the proxy assigned to the backup server by itself. Yeah. The rule of thumb when you deploy in the Veeam, you get it installed by default with your server, remove it and add another one. Yeah, add another one that will not be on the same machine better because of the load balancing. Yeah. So after you install Office 365, you should configure an additional set of backup proxy servers to manage your data in more efficient manner. And each backup proxy server can process one or several organizations. Keep in mind, there's no limitation in this regard. So you might have multiple organizations, one proxy or multiple proxies, same organization. So you can mix it in different ways. Sizing of the VBO compute infrastructure in this case, it's actually based on the amount of objects which need to be processed in the backup. And just to make 100% sure, you can see in front of you which counters, what counts when you're calculating this amount of objects. Yeah. We'll not stop here for a long time as well. You'll have slides, you'll be able to check it, but this each and every individual object. Yeah. To run any sizing, proxy repository sizing of the job, you first should understand the number of these objects. Yeah, because all our scenarios and formulas, even in our website, you'll see per object. Yeah, keep it in mind. And next step is just to check these maximums. What you can see in front of you, it's based on the Veeam QA testing and the recommended maximums for specified config. Sorry, the maximum per component, per proxy, repo, installation, organization, doesn't matter. They must be maintained at the same time. Yeah, for example, number per objects and number per users. It's more like a t-shirt sizing. Yeah, so you have the minimum configuration and the recommended one. In case you're building infrastructure for multiple customers, I personally recommend you to start with this kind of basic 8 cores, 32 gigs of memory. It will be good for a long time. In case you're pretty okay with scaling in later on, you can start with the minimum proxy configuration, check how it goes, and start to increase the amount of resources. Yeah. So the progression here, I believe it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And later on, for example, yeah, in case you have the requirement to size it, to check it, so it's simple. You can use this straightforward approach. Yeah, for example, you have an organization with 500 users, and you might need to protect all mailbox, primary, archive, like there are 200 shared mailbox, some of them public mailboxes, their personal sites, OneDrives, along with SharePoint sites as well, yeah, and team users. So all together, all in one bundle. The total number of objects, in this case, in case you'll summary, this will be around 3,410, I believe. This example, this infrastructure can be backed up by a single repository based on the configuration maximums. Yeah, check this here. Yeah, so you can see number of proxies, objects per proxy, users, amount of everything. So in case we'll cover this one with the previous one, so we are free to go. That's the recommended way to size, yeah, and you should understand how you size and why you're doing it in this way. But if you want to cut corners, feel free to check the link here in the below, in the bottom, yeah, where you can find some community-driven tool based on Veeam best practice number. You can just open it, click, add the numbers. There's some kind of article can explain what you're doing, why you're doing this way, but you can use it for the sizing as well. It's pretty simple, but pretty efficient as well. And few more notes on proxy sizing, yeah. It's recommended to throttle the use bandwidth per proxy on a shared network connection, just not to block different applications. By default, the proxy server will take all available bandwidth. Yeah, it's pretty humble from this regards to run the backups as fast as possible, to make a backup of all the data as fast as possible. And all we know that normally, there's no real dedicated internet connection available just for VBR. And it's reasonable to throttle the maximum usable bandwidth so that other applications don't suffer too much. And depending on the backup schedule, the limit should be set to a reasonable value. It might be okay to take 90% of the bandwidth at night, but if the backup runs during work hours, maybe 40% will be conservative, but without affecting operations. Next one is think about the number of threads. Yeah, and if the number of active connections started by VBO proxy responsible by backup data, yeah, it's one of the main numbers. This number goes from 0 to 256. You can easily change it. The higher number, the faster potentially the backup job will complete. The default number when you're just installing the proxy, the connection is 64. Yeah, it's usually pretty okay. Although it's possible to change this number using the thread number too high, in this case, might incur the throttling policy that Microsoft activates to control the resources. Yeah. So when you're playing with this number, there is no specific number. We're not able to provide you like idea which number to put, but you can play with it. But too low number can be bad. The high number can be bad as well. Just monitor the sample test job to verify and adjust the number of threads. Yeah. Very high CPU and memory load is indicator for misconfiguration. Yeah. So the number is too high. So monitor number of threads and pressure on the CPU. And the amount of bandwidth is a related metric as well. Yeah, it represents the network through shared access number of configuration threads. By default, it's set to unlimited. In this case, all available bandwidth to the server running as a VBO proxy will be used. The best practice is to limit maximum bandwidth as well. Yeah. So limit, control it, throttle it, just to be sure that you are not impacting anything else. And one of the main ideas as well, when you're running Veeam, it's a great idea to keep the same operation system versions on proxy and repository, yeah? Just to reduce compatibility issues and reduce support effort. As well, we've seen different implementations, but when VBO leveraged the Microsoft JetBlue database, which is the default in our case, yeah, individual versions of their operation system, they have individual version of JetBlue, and each and every version get another build, which make it more and more complicated. Also, drilling down problems is much easier when all components run on the same operating system and have the same feature level security settings and groups. Yep. So just make it simple for yourself and for future generations, you know, when you'll face with any issues. And last but not least, working stable communication between components with working DNS name resolution. It's one of the key things when you're trying to prevent any hard to trace issues. Again, when it's deployed, everything is worked fine. One day, everyone facing with some kind of issues and asking for support from our support team. Yeah. Will it work without dynamic? Will it work on dynamic IP? Yes, it will. Will it work without DNS? Yes, as well. But it will dramatically increase root cause analysis if you face with any issues. And again, yeah, we are not safe from that. We're not secured from that. So keep it in mind. Make it simple, throttle it, and use the static IP and like write DNS records. By the way, DNS records is one of the main issues usually, and which is not configured in the right way. DNS and PTR as well. And that's it. It's all about proxy, yeah? So let's go to the next guy, the repository. Again, a backup repository is a storage system where you can keep backups created by your backup job. Simple and straightforward. The repositories are tightly coupled with proxy servers. Yeah? While a single proxy server can host multiple repositories, each repository is uniquely coupled with a single proxy server. That means that only one proxy can write to a specific repository. Yeah? Keep it in mind when designing the infrastructure. One proxy can write only to the specific repository, only one. Yeah. Classic repositories can reside on direct attached storages, SAN volumes, SMB3 network attached storage, NAS shares, and contain Microsoft Jet database. However, from version 4 of the product, object storage repositories are also supported. For this, only a small cache is used locally, around 1%, and all other content is directly stored on the object storage in the bucket container. Yeah. For one repository, you can either use local block storage or object storage. There's no tiering functionality in between. Don't confuse it with VBR. With VBR, you're uploading data to to local storage and then uploading to tiering to the object storage. It's not the case here. Yeah? Here it's like almost directly with the caching. However, the benefit of Veeam that you can choose to use hyperscale object storage or to build it in your own infrastructure. All the best practices are, however, applicable to both. Just when choosing storage, keep an eye on Veeam Ready database that provides a list of partner solutions that successfully passed Veeam testing criteria. As well, you get list of the you get link to it in the yeah. There are two Veeam Ready, which is object Veeam Ready, which is certified. Currently, object immutability is not a requirement for Office 365. However, maybe still better to keep in mind that for future, yeah, because we don't have it right now, but maybe for future times, better to choose something that's like can just check the link. You'll see list of vendors, which is pretty useful and straightforward. Side amount of objects, again, which need to be processed in the backup. The following list shows that counts as an object here. So we discussed before size in the repository. Yeah, that's the numbers we should get. We get a straightforward formula. Yeah, current mailbox is total size multiplied and plus 10% working area, but we have to fill this table. Yeah, and the main value that's hard to find is currently primary mailbox total size. And there are different ways how we can get this information. You can dig through a web UI, or at the same time, you can run through some PowerShell commands. I'm not a huge UI fan, so we'll do these 3 commands and they will help us. Yeah, this simple, like get mailbox to view mailbox objects attribute, archive to get the same information about archive mailboxes, and statistics that will give us back information about mailboxes such as size, number of messages and campaigns, and so on. And by the way, this command, they're part of Exchange Online management module, so you have to install it before usage. But it will provide you the great information about what's going on in your infrastructure. So in the bottom, if you see, yeah, we have the list of total item sizes, and in case we'll summarize them, we'll get something like 23.5 gigabytes, which will be the amount of data we're keeping in our Exchange. If we'll do the same run with the archive, archive, yeah, we'll have information about archive mailbox. Later on, we can put this data into our table, yeah, and just simply make the calculation. So current primary mailbox is 23.5. Daily change rate, actually in field, we experience typical daily change rate from 0.2 to 1%. For normal mailbox backups, the change rate is multiplied by 2. You can see it in the formula. Because of their archiving and file versioning will take up additional backup space. More optimistically, this factor can be also calculated like 1.5, like to multiply 1.5. And days of retention, it's simple. It's configured when you create in the backup job. Yeah. So we're taking all this data, we multiply and making this sign like the beauty of math. Yeah, and we're getting the information that like we'll need 110 gigabytes for DB and around 10 gigs more for working area, which brings us from 25 gig to 120. Yeah. So it's good to keep in mind when you're running the sizing, when you're trying to understand the estimate the value of it. The same concept is applicable to SharePoint and OneDrive. You can view current and previous data usage for SharePoint Online and Business through the Admin Center. For example, for SharePoint, it reports usage, SharePoint, site usage, storage. Yeah, but be aware this only reflects your current usage. In the cloud, and the backup on disk will be larger because of metadata and backed up item versions. So just leave some extra gaps there as well. With this data, you can estimate the daily change rate and total source of the data. Yeah, and as well, from our field experience, we can see daily changes from 0.5 to 1%. There are a lot of things that you can have to focus on the on-premise repositories, what you have to do and you don't have to do. By the way, guys, I can see that we're a bit running off time. I believe we'll still need around maybe 5 to 10 minutes to finish. So in case you'll be able to stay with us, great. In case not, still, I believe we will share recording with you later on. Yeah. So there are a few more slides to finish. So talking about do's and don'ts. Yeah. When you're designing the repository and design the repository like in the classic way with DAS and SAN, use high throughput, low latency storage. Thus, DAS and SAN, their preferred storage volumes for repository, and go with the default controller and Stripe SAS settings. Don't over-engineer it. VBO stores backup data in the Jet database when you're keeping it on-prem. Yeah, and that means that random I/O on this used storage, a high IOPS and bandwidth storage is preferred. Yeah? In general, DAS or fiber channel SAN block storage is really preferred one. The repository file system, to make it simple and straightforward, don't use RFS. Yeah, choose NTFS with the default setting of 4K allocation units. Both NTFS and RFS systems, they both are supported. When using RFS, the data integrity feature should be disabled by default. But still, NTFS is recommended because it doesn't need any error-prone reconfiguration from default settings. It just works as it is. And don't enable any storage encryption, the duplication, compression. I know that's like you want to do this to reduce the amount of data, but we're working with the database, and this compression will provide huge delays on I/O. Yeah. Separate repositories by data type. That's been discussed before. I'll not stop into that, but keep in mind that that like we have automatic trigger rule inside of the software that when you're reaching 59 terabytes, it will create a new database file, yeah, and it will rotate it. However, handling such large repositories, yeah, when you have a lot of them, that comes with problems, and it can extend the migration times when you need this migration. So try to make it simple, try to split them and don't explode it. And try to avoid, once again, very large repositories. And very large meaning just like 200, 300 terabytes. It's the top, it's a manageable size. Everything above that, it's too much. Yeah. And keep the 10% for free. Don't forget about this 10%. It's working space that we need for distribution. And when we're talking about object storage repository, object repository considerations, keep in mind the rule of thumb that 1% of the source data is local cache. When I'm talking about object storage, again, yeah, it can be any kind of object storage. And actually, all best practices, they're applicable for both, for online object storage in public clouds and one that you can deploy locally. Yeah, they're all the same. 1% for caching. Consider that like there will be a lot of API calls in between, and as well, in below you can see the link to the calculator that can give you some estimations about what amount of objects API will be used. The sizing of object storage is pretty simple, and it's based on the sizing of the classic repository. It's 50% of the classic repository. Yeah, so in case previously we made the calculation that we got 110 gigabytes for Exchange, that means in object storage we'll need 54, 55 gigabytes, which is 50% compression. It's like something really big. That's why a lot of customers moving more and more into object storage in both in Veeam solution, Veeam Backup Office 365 and backup replication at the same time. Yeah. So 110 gigs of data will need 55 gigs of object storage plus 1 gig for cache locally. Yeah, it's just like to reduce the amount of API calls that we're getting outside. And the sizing, I hope it's clear. So few more notes, few more attention flags before we close the topic. Yeah, so general security best practice apply for object storage. Create your own storage user with own credentials. Yeah, it's the best security rule. Just like don't use shared accounts, don't use the shared security rules. Create own credentials for bucket containers, apply restrictive ACL to the object storage provider, and check security best practices to the specific object storage. Yeah, we will not be able to cover everything, but each of them will have their own security concerns and recommendations. It doesn't matter if it's hyperscale, if it's local one, it doesn't matter. Yeah, just make it in a secure way. Please don't set up tiering policies. We faced a lot of issues with that. Yes, we know that there are a lot of tiering policies like Glacier, like Microsoft Cool Blob, a lot of local vendors, I mean, like on-premises vendors get their own tiering. There's no built-in support for tiering in Office 365 right now. And this kind of archive tiers and native tiering policies must not be configured because they can damage their structure of the backup by itself. Yeah. The archive tiers do use other APIs than the normal object storages, and the data which is moved is not accessible anymore for BBO. Even old objects can still be part of the latest restore point. Think about 1 year old email which is still in your inbox because it contains evergreen information. By tiering item older than 1 year to archive tier, this mail would be inaccessible, and Veeam, while it's still expected to be part of yesterday backup, will try to restore it and fix it in. Yeah, it will be impossible. So don't tier them, and mainly don't manually delete. Yeah, it's the worst thing you can do. Manually do something with the backups. Deleting even single email, even single file from the object storage can affect the entire repository and can corrupt it and make the data unusable. Yeah. So keep it in the safe way and do it in the right way as well. And last but not least, yeah, 3-to-1 rule. It's one of the basics when we're talking about data protection. This best practice tells you to have 3 copies on 2 different kinds of media and which one should be offsite. And you should consider this rule also during your planning of backup Office 365. As a result, it's important to protect Office 365 deployment against accidental data loss as well. Yeah, and protecting the Veeam backup Office 365 deployment ensures availability of the infrastructure components, and actually even more important for the data in the Veeam backup Office 365 backup repositories. Yeah, so you should protect the core component, the databases, in case you have, like, if you have a cache database, it's not so important because we can restore the data from object storage even if you lose the cache database, but it will be easy for you to restore the service. Yeah. Again, Veeam backup Office can be physical deployment, can be virtual deployment, and with both virtual and physical server installation, Veeam backup notification offers all the tools that can bring the application and crash consistent backup of the deployment. So keep it in mind. Yes, it's a backup tool for backup protection, but you should backup it as well. Yeah. Currently, there is no built-in protection, but that's the recommended solution to have it done in this way. Okay, guys. So as I promised, we are 5 minutes late. However, I hope that you've got some new information that I believe we'll have no time right now to cover questions. Let me check if we have a lot. Yeah, we have quite a while. So as been said, guys, yeah, we'll take care of these questions a bit later, and you'll have the answers for them, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, even in your mailbox. Yeah, so it will be covered. I hope that again you learn something new for yourself. Product is growing, technology is growing, and we're here to help you to design the best solution for you, for your infrastructure, and for your customers as well. Okay, that's all from my side.
Guys, thank you for the attendance. And yes, we managed to answer a few questions, but the more complicated and especially technical one will be taken care after the session. So, and maybe that's a good thing. It will be more comprehensive for you. So yeah, have a great day.
Thank you guys again. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you,
Thanks
Artyom.
Veronica for assisting. Thanks guys.
No
Cheers.
problem. Cheers.